everyone, subscribers, it's Vic from Forever Scrapping, and today I am sharing with you a process video for Lottie Loves Paper. It's using my latest design team pack, which is using the Avenue collection by Pebbles, and I absolutely love the peachy tones to this. There are quite a few cut apart sheets in the collection, and my aim for this layout was to focus on trying to use up one of those sheets. I always struggle to use cut apart sheets with tags and things on. So I decided that I would use a grid layout. Now, grid layouts are always a brilliant go-to if your creative mojo is running a bit low, and they always give you lovely results. And this cut apart sheet in the collection was perfect for a grid layout. It had quite a few 2-inch squares on it with little pretty patterns and sentiments on, like you can see there, like hello and love you. So I really wanted to make the most of those and utilize them on my layout. So as you can see, I've got the basis of my layout here. And I had a really lovely photograph of my daughter in the local wildflower meadow a couple of months back, and I changed it on my printing app to print out in Silvertone. I always prefer to print my photos out in Silvertone rather than monochrome, because I just find that they're a little bit more striking for me and stand out a bit better on your layouts. So I think sometimes monochrome photos can get a little bit lost, whereas the Silvertone really highlights people's features. So that's always my go-to setting when I'm printing a photograph of this kind of type rather than a colour photograph. So I've printed it out and I've cut it as a 2x2 to go with the squares that I've popped on. Now, as you can see here, I'm just using a ruler. I don't often use rulers to help measure out on my layouts, but I really wanted to make sure to try and get the white space edges on each side of this grid equal. So I think it ended up being about 2.5 inches around each side of my grid layout, or of the grid that I was making. So just making sure that everything is lined up, and I've just sped it up a bit because you don't need to see me doing it all. But the gaps between the squares, they were just short of 1/2 inch each, I think, at the end. So the layout's coming together really nicely, and I love the effect of like the peachy tones in the collection and the monochromatic prints, the black and white prints of like the florals on one of those squares and some of the word paper. So some of the sentiments on that 12x12 sheet of paper that had the 2-inch squares on really weren't my cup of tea, like with deepest sympathy. But you can always cut them out and flip them over and use the B-sides, which is what I've done here, as well as adding some of the other papers in. So I'm happy with how everything's looking, but I decided that I wanted them to stand off the page just a little bit more, just a few of the bits. And I didn't want a huge border around them because I thought that would ruin the grid style layout and make it a little bit too uneven. So I've literally just backed it with some of the black and white gingham paper, and then just cut literally almost like a 2 mil border around that backing there, just to help the sentiments pop off the page. So I've done that for the hello square, and I've done it for the love you square. And it also ties in nicely with that black and white photograph that I've got of my daughter there. It just helps balance the whole layout, I feel. Now, as you can see here, I'm just using my ruler and a pencil and drawing a 2-inch square at the bottom here. I had placed loads of Bramble Fox perspectives in that area because I think it was the Flower Meadow pack. I thought the colours went really nicely with the Avenue collection, and I wanted to incorporate them onto my layout, but I've been thinking for a while how to use them, and instead of putting them on top of my cardstock background, I actually wanted to submerse them behind it. So I've actually cut myself a little frame there, and you'll see later on what I'm going to do with perspectives. So I've cut that out, and now I've decided that I also want to back the photograph of my daughter, but that black and white gingham paper was obviously too dark, seeing as the photograph was those colours as well. It really wouldn't have shown up very much. So I've backed that with some of this little floral paper here. You don't see much of it, but that pink tiny little edge around it really helps bring the photograph out and link it into the peachy pinky papers that I've already used on the layout as well. So it really is just a case, those papers that I've used to mat those 3 squares, just to try and tie everything together nicely and make it all merge into one and work well with one another. So here we go. This is now what I'm going to do with the frame that I've cut out, the frame square. I'm just drawing around it with a pencil onto some of the black word paper in the collection. And this bit takes a while because the perspectives come with like a little plastic film on the front and back. So as I'm putting them down, I'm peeling that film off. You must peel that off before you stick them on, because otherwise you don't get the full colour of the perspectives. It's there as a protective sheet. So it took me a little while to remove those, as you can see. So I'm just fast forwarding it a little bit, and we'll jump forwards in a second. So I'm happy where everything is in that square, and I've added some leaves as well, which I really think brings it to life. Just popping my layout on the top of it again to make sure that I'm happy with the placement of those perspectives, and now sticking it down with my Cosmic Shimmer glue. I know people use glossy accents and things to stick these perspectives down, but I find my Cosmic Shimmer glue does the job for anything really. It sticks down these perspectives lovely, as well as sticking paper to paper. So that's what I always use. So I won't bore you with me sticking them all down, but I'm happy with where they are. They're all stuck down now, and because I want them level with my background cardstock, I'm now putting some sticky back foam around the edge to create a frame border around those perspectives. Now originally I thought it would have to be 2 pieces thick, but then when I put the background over the top of it, it was too submersed, if that makes sense, too far behind my layout. I wanted it level, I didn't want it too far back. So it was quite easy to rectify. There we go, you can see, but it was a bit too deep for me, it wasn't working. So I just pulled off the second piece that I'd put on just to take it back to 1 piece of foam thickness there. And I absolutely love the effect. I've been thinking about using this idea for ages and hadn't put it to practice, so really pleased with how this works. So just using some double-sided tape there and then sticking it onto the back of my cardstock. And I do think that I will use this idea again on a layout because I just think it looks brilliant. I've always tended to stick those perspectives on top of my layout to add extra dimension, but by doing it this way, it works really nicely, I think. So off screen, I've used my sewing machine and I've machine stitched with some white thread down the vertical and across the horizontal grid lines, just to add some extra texture to my layout. And now I'm just using some lime green thread, which I'm twiddling around my fingers to link into the bright green of the leaves of the perspectives that I used, and just to add another pop of colour. I think it brings that peachy pinky tone of the papers to life. Fussy cuts round some of the butterfly paper in the collection, and also one of the bigger butterflies from those 2-inch squares from the cut apart sheet that I was talking about earlier. And I'm not going to stick those flat onto my layout. I'm literally going to run my glue down the back of the body part, and then that way the wings still are lifted up a little bit from the layout itself, and it adds another layer of interest. I always like sticking my butterflies that way because I just think it gives them a little bit of movement to the layout, and rather than everything being flat on the page, it just helps bring the layout to life a little bit. So I'm really loving how this layout's turning out, and there's not really much more for me to do now, just embellishing the layout how I'd like it to be, and that's the fun part for me. I love the fiddling around and adding little extra details on that you want to add, although sometimes it does take me a long time to do. I do wonder and ponder about things for quite a while, and maybe sometimes I should just be a little bit more definite about things. So on that left middle square, I've added a floral sticker which I've mounted onto cardstock and then stuck around and then layered up onto some foam pads to add some extra dimension. Another little bramble fox butterfly perspective there. A few of the word stickers. And then all that was left really was for me to add my title. And the thicker alphabets in that went really well. Because they were a darker colour, they linked in the photograph, which is quite dark, and that bottom middle square, which has got the dark background. It just tied it all in nicely. Oh, and I also forgot to say that I used some of my Distress Oxide inks watered down to colour in some of the florals on that black and white florally print paper. And that's quite a nice way to link those kind of monochromatic papers into your layouts by adding your own colour to it, so you can help tie it all in together. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. As I said, it's been a design team process video for Lottie Loves Paper. This collection is in the shop now and it really is beautiful. Thanks for watching. Please give it a thumbs up if you've liked it, or subscribe to my channel. Thanks then. Bye.